If you look at the back of this playing card, can you know what the face of it is? Probably not, right? There's no way for you to know that this is going to be the 4 of spades. Little do you know that the magicians have this thing called marked decks, which means I can look at the back design of certain decks of playing cards and know what the faces are. Sometimes it's just for suit, sometimes it's just for value, sometimes even for both. So today I'm going over my top 5 marked decks in my collection. And starting off at number 5, we have the Orbit V8 playing cards. The reason I have this deck at number 5 is because the mark system is a little bit more difficult to read. It is a reader's back, which means you'll actually have like a 5 and a C, or a 5 and the shape of a club, which means you can just read it off instead of having to deciphering some code. But because all this orange in the back design doesn't have a ton of contrast, it just makes it to where it is a little bit hard to read sometimes. But just to prove to you that this is a marked deck, I'm going to give it a couple of cuts, though I don't know anywhere where this deck is located, and I'm just going to take whatever's on top. So right here, we have the 9 of Hearts, and I can tell you that because on top is the 9 of Hearts. This is a fully marked deck of cards, so you can tell both the value and the suits. This deck's number 5. Coming in at number 4, we have the White Knights playing cards by Chris Ramsey, Daniel Madison, and Illusionist. This is what your back design looks like, and it is also a fully marked deck. But this time, instead of being a reader's back, this is going to be a cipher back, which means you'll have to decode a little bit. So let's just see if I can get this right real quick. So again, we're going to give it a couple of cuts and one more for good measure. Let's take a quick look at it. So first I'm going to look for the suit. And the suit I'm going to see is a spade. And when it comes to the value, it is going to be an ace. You turn this over, we have the ace of spades. So it is going to take a little bit of ciphering to be able to see how the back design works, though you can try and figure out and decode what the marking system actually is. But it is still super simple. Not a ton goes into it, especially if you have a little bit of a background in chess knowledge, but even if you don't, that's okay too. This deck, number 4. Coming in at number 3, another Orbit deck, this time the V7s. This was the first marked deck that Orbit came out with, and I'm extremely happy that they did because I'm loving these marked decks. And this deck is also a reader back. So let's try it again with this back design. Give it a couple of cuts, one more for good measure, and let's try it again. So this deck right here, this card, 9 of Diamonds. Don't believe me? Bam, 9 of Diamonds. Super simple to read. Never would have known. Literally had no idea it was one until someone left a comment on the review that I did of this deck of cards. And since that person left a comment on that video, I have done a different reveal on every single one of these cards that I have that are marked. And I put them all in a playlist just for you. That's why this deck of cards right here is number 3. But at number 2, we have the DMC Elites V5. This deck is the craziest deck of them all because it is the easiest to read. I can literally set this deck up 10 feet away from me and still read the marking system on this deck without you having the foggiest idea if you've never seen these decks of cards before. Plus, it is a reader back. And this is the back design. So let me give it a couple of cuts. And again, one more for good measure, just so I don't know where anything is at. And we're going to look at this right here, 5 of Clubs. Bam, it's literally that easy. I can hold it as far away from me as possible. Let's try it again here. I'm going to hold it all the way out here. Queen of Diamonds. And oriented down. It's literally, it tells you orientation, everything, right? It literally tells you everything. You can put it 10 feet away. It says so on the box. Like, it comes with the things like, you can show this to yourself from 10 feet away and still understand it. It is the most blatantly obvious marking system once you know how it's done. Super freaking cool. Clearly number 2. Before we get into number 1, I'm going to have 2 runner-ups, first of which being the Chess Club playing cards. Although I really do like the marking system, this one is only marked for suits. So let's see if I can get this one right. Give it a couple of cuts, and of course one more for good measure. And let's see if I can get it right. So of course right here we have a club. Turn around, club. Now you can never actually tell what the value is, which is definitely unfortunate. I've tried reading this thing in hundreds of different ways and looked at this thing for hours, but there's no way to actually read the value on this, but it is definitely cool and can definitely be used by magicians. Just, you don't get the value for it. Coming in at number 6, we have the Turtle Bay playing cards. Here is your back design, and let's see if I can read this one. This one is actually going to be a fully marked deck. So right here, this is going to be unfortunately a cipher back. So first I'm going to look for the suits. This one is going to be a club, and then when it comes to the value, again, this deck is going to be much harder to read, but I think it's going to be the 2 of clubs. So we're going to take it here, and the 2 of clubs. Of course, it's going to be right because it's a marked deck, but this one is unfortunately a pretty difficult deck to read because it's not like blatantly obvious, which you'd hope it wouldn't be, but even for someone who knows how to read the deck, it's still a bit complicated. Which, although the marking system is really fun and unique to this deck, it's going to have to be at number 6. And before we get into the number 1 deck, just know that all of the marking system reveals, the reviews to these decks of cards are going to be in the description below. Plus, a lot of these decks of cards are going to be 10% off as well if you use code cardperfectmagician, and I'll leave that down there as well to save you some money. But without any further ado, let's get into the number one deck of cards, a collaboration between Knock Playing Cards and Theory 11, you guessed it, the Midnight Knocks. Now, is this the easiest deck to read? No, it is not. It is by far not the easiest deck to read. There are much harder ones, believe me, and I can go into that some other time with the hardest deck to read ever. But this deck right here, although so simple, is a fully marked deck. Now, most decks of Knock Playing Cards will only have the center black color with the white line around it. This one has one more black line that goes around it, which can then make it fully marked. Most Knock decks are only marked Pursuit, and I will leave that reveal in the description as well. But first, let's get into this one. So this is going to be a cipher back, of course, because there's no way to make this a reader back whatsoever. Now, when it comes to the orientation, it's going to be this way. When it comes to the value, it's going to be a diamond. And when it comes to a suit, it is a 5, 8, 13. King of diamonds. Got it every time. So clearly, as you can see kind of that process go around, it definitely takes a little bit of work to be able to cipher that through. But the fact that you can take this simple back design and make it a fully marked deck clearly deserves to be number one. Well, at least that's in my book. So if you have a different favorite marked deck, let me know down in the comments, one, so I can pick it up, and two, just so I can know a little bit more about you. Plus, if you want to know how to read all of these decks right here, I will leave the entire marking system playlist right there, and my top 5 marked decks from last year right there. I'll catch you guys in the next one, but make sure to subscribe if you like these types of videos. This is Card Perfect, signing off.